Today, in a courtroom in Miami, Florida, former President Donald J. Trump pled not guilty to all 37 counts brought against him by way of indictment that was handed down last week from the Department of Justice related to his supposed mishandling of documents that were found at Mar-a-Lago in August of 2022. Tomorrow night, I'm going to post a video getting into a discussion about the legal arguments behind the charges that the DOJ are bringing against Trump. But tonight, I want to do a video showing you the various reactions to what happened today, because those reactions are going to tell you an awful lot, not only about certain GOP politicians, but also about the base of the Republican Party. So hang on, we're going to get into everything in just 1 second. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk. Now, as I said, Trump pled not guilty to all 37 counts that were brought against him today in a Miami courtroom. That you would expect. There were reactions to it. That you would expect. But it's the reactions of some people versus other people that are very, very surprising, very, very telling, and very, very important to keep an eye on going forward. So let's start with the basics. Let's get into what actually happened. We've got a headline here from NBCnews.com, and it reads as follows. Trump pleads not guilty in federal classified documents case. Trump was indicted last week on 37 counts related to his alleged mishandling of the nation's secrets. In an article written by Jonathan Allen, Gettr Gregorian, and Alex Seitz-Waltz, Miami, a stone-faced former President Donald Trump entered a not guilty plea Tuesday to charges he lied and schemed to hold on to sensitive national security material that he was supposed to have surrendered when he left the White House. Trump, 76, was indicted last week on 37 federal felony counts, including willful retention of national defense information, making false statements of representations, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. In court, Trump, wearing a blue suit and red tie, why that's even relevant, I have no idea, sat silently with his hands crossed and had a not guilty plea entered by his attorney during the brief proceeding before Magistrate Judge Jonathan Goodman. Quote, "We most certainly enter a plea of not guilty," Trump lawyer Todd Blanche told the judge. Special counsel Jack Smith, whose office brought the case, was in court for the proceedings, seated on the front row. Goodman did not put any travel restrictions on Trump, who's campaigning for president, or ask him to surrender his passport. Prosecutors had not asked for either restriction. The judge did on his own bar Trump from discussing the case with any witnesses identified on a list compiled by government lawyers. Okay, so that's what happened. Now, I said it's the reaction to what happened that's very, very telling. And let me say this up front. You're going to find out real fast who the players are, where they stand, and what they really think. Now, we're going to go first with some reactions from some of the other GOP presidential candidates. Some of this you might expect, some of it you might not. So, let's start with thehill.com, and we will take a look at the following. Pence says he, quote, can't defend allegations in Trump indictment. Former Vice President Mike Pence on Tuesday said he could not defend the, quote, very serious allegations against former President Donald Trump in a federal indictment over the handling of classified documents. Quote, having read the indictment, these are very serious allegations, and I can't defend what is alleged, Pence said in an interview with the Wall Street Journal editorial board. But the president is entitled to his day in court. He's entitled to bring a defense, and I want to reserve judgment until he has opportunity to respond. Now, if you forgive me for chuckling, but I just find it very amusing coming from Mike Pence that he can't defend Trump. Well, you can't defend Trump now. You couldn't defend Trump in 2020. You couldn't be bothered to try and help him ever since. This from Mike Pence I am not surprised by, to be perfectly honest with you. It's been rumored for months he's wanted to run for president. Now he's going to get to do it. And I have bad news for Mike Pence. Sir, if you think you're going to be elected president of the United States, you've got a better chance of buying swampland in Arizona than you do being elected president. Matter of fact, you're so disliked inside the GOP base, you couldn't be elected dog catcher. Not after what you did to Trump in 2020. In the minds of his supporters and the minds of fair-minded Republicans all across the country, you hung him out to dry. They'll have nothing to do with you. So frankly, your opinion on this is irrelevant and slightly amusing. But it's the next one that's kind of surprising to me, in one sense because it's so revealing. Now, let me explain what I'm getting at. Take a look at this. This is from Mediaite.com, and this is the reaction of U.S. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Headline, Tim Scott changes tune and calls Trump indictment a serious case with serious allegations. Oh, it's so serious. So serious, in fact, they put a picture of him up there making a very ugly face. We read in the article, Senator Tim Scott, Republican South Carolina, who's challenging Donald Trump for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination, conceded on Monday that the 37 criminal count federal indictment against the former president is indeed, quote, a serious case with serious allegations. Scott's initial reaction to the news Trump would be indicted was to join Harris Faulkner on Fox News last Thursday evening and declare the Department of Justice had been weaponized against Republicans, a regular talking point on the right. Scott spoke with reporters on Monday after a campaign stop in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and despite labeling the Trump indictment serious, the South Carolina picked up where he left off on Fox. As Americans, we have to hold the justice system where the Lady of Justice wears a blindfold. Scott then vowed to reform the Justice Department if elected. Okay. Scott's concession that the DOJ had a serious case against Trump, however, was a notable change of tune for the GOP contender who has so far avoided criticizing Trump. Now, I say this is surprising. In one sense, for me it is, in another sense it isn't. It's been long rumored about Tim Scott that he is a serious two-faced backstabber when it comes to Donald Trump. He'll say in public that Trump ought to be, our party's leader and we ought to support him and back him up and everything. And then he goes behind the scenes telling people, man, if we could just get rid of Trump, we'd be so much better off, man. We could get people to rally to the party. But right now he's the face of the Republican Party and no one's going to hang out with us. The mask just slipped off of Tim Scott. Now you get to see him for what he is. Folks, y'all don't believe me right now, and that's fine. You don't have to, but I'm telling you, keep an eye on this weasel, because that's exactly what he is. He's a two-faced weasel. Oh, I can't believe you're saying that about a black Republican. I'd say it about a white Republican. I'd say it about a Chinese Republican. I'd say it about an Indian Republican. I don't care. Tim Scott's a lying two-faced weasel. I'm telling you, don't trust this guy. But speaking of Indian Republicans, there is one candidate that I think is going to benefit from what happened today outside of Donald Trump, which I'll get to that in a few moments. Take a look at this headline because I find this to be very interesting. From John Solomon's website, Just the News, we have this. Vivek Ramasway says GOP donors have been telling all candidates to stay away from the Trump indictment. Ramasway says he refuses to, quote, abide by being a disciple of the donor class. We read a little bit into this article written by Charlotte Hazard. Presidential candidate Vivek Ramasway on Tuesday called for Republican presidential candidates to declare independence from the donor class in the GOP and vow to pardon former President Trump. Quote, I challenge every U.S. presidential candidate to join me in standing for truth, Ramasway wrote on Twitter. Commit to pardon Donald Trump for these federal charges on day one or explain why you won't. No one should hide. Not Biden, not DeSantis, not Haley, not Pence, not RFK Jr., not Scott, not anyone. Principles over politics. Ramasway made a speech in Miami, Florida, where Trump was arraigned in federal court on Tuesday. During his speech, he announced that his campaign sent a letter to every other presidential campaign asking them to promise to pardon Trump if elected. Quote, "It's going to be difficult for all those other candidates to sign this letter. The reason it's going to be difficult for them is the same reason it's difficult for me. The donor class has been calling every Republican candidate and telling us to stay away from this, not to touch it with a 10-foot pole." Ramasway said he refuses to listen to the donor class and called for his fellow Republican candidates to do the same. I tell you what, up to now, I've kept an eye on Ramasway. I like what he's saying, like where he's going, but I tell you what he just did today, that post on Twitter and that speech he gave in Miami, is going to redound to his benefit, because finally, somebody is coming out and understanding the implications of what the Democrat Party and the Department of Justice are trying to do to Donald Trump. And he's giving a full-throated defense of the former president. Now, whether you like Donald Trump, whether you don't like Donald Trump, most people are looking at what the DOJ is doing. Most people are looking at what Alvin Bragg up in New York is doing, and they're coming to a two-word conclusion: political persecution. Ramasway understands this. Ramasway is being independent, and Ramasway is about to put his fellow candidates on notice. And I tell you what, that pledge to pardon Trump if he's convicted, and if one of these guys is elected president, I tell you what, politically speaking, that's probably one of the smartest things that I've seen done so far. More reaction. Here's the one that I think is just a fascinating thing, because she let the cat out of the bag. Watch this. This is from the Associated Press. Love this one. Jill Biden says, quote, "It's a little shocking many Republicans support Trump after the indictment." Jill Biden, in her first solo outing on the 2024 campaign, said Monday it was a little shocking that a sizable number of Republicans are still thinking of voting for Donald Trump even after his federal indictment, a subject that her husband has tried to avoid speaking about. She told Democratic donors that the 2024 election presents a choice between what she described as the strong, steady leadership of President Joe Biden and the chaos and corruption, hatred and division of MAGA Republicans. Wow. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Anyway, the First Lady, speaking to a small group of Democrats in an apartment in Manhattan's Upper East Side, said she was surprised to see a headline before her flight landed that described a majority of Republicans in a poll saying that they were still planning to vote for Trump, who is set to appear in a Florida court on Tuesday. They don't care about the indictment, so that's a little shocking, I think. Oh, she just let the cat out of the bag. She did. This indictment isn't about justice. It's not about the law. It's not about anything else. It's about shaking Donald Trump's supporters off of him such that Trump doesn't win the Republican nomination. I mean, she can sit there and say, "Oh, that's not what I meant." That's exactly what you meant. The indictment's now come down. It's not having any effect. And yet you're surprised by this. You just can't see it. Now, what is she referencing exactly? Let me show you something. This is really interesting. I think this is fascinating. There's a Morning Consult poll that's out there. It hasn't really gotten a whole lot of traction yet. But when you see this, I think you're going to understand what it was that Jill Biden was referring to. This came out today around 1 o'clock in the afternoon in an article in Newsmax written by Charles Kim. Despite facing a federal indictment last week for his handling of documents after leaving the White House in 2021, former President Donald Trump's lead over the 2024 GOP presidential field has increased. A new Morning Consult poll shows Trump's lead increased by 5 percentage points last week. Now, here's the guts of the poll. Watch this. As soon as it pulls up here. Here we go. Tracking the Republican primary. This poll was done June 9th through June the 11th. So the news about the indictment last week would have had time to soak into the results of this poll. Look at this. Donald Trump, 59%. Ron DeSantis, 19%. If you take everybody else's numbers, add them up, and give them to DeSantis, he still can't touch Trump. Trump is right, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, Trump is right on the verge of 60%. Folks, this nomination is over, absent some major asteroid earth-shattering event that comes along between now and the Iowa caucuses. This thing is Trump's to lose. And that just makes the point for everybody. Every time they bring up one of these indictments, Trump gets stronger. The base of the GOP is being wedded to Donald Trump in this 2024 race because they're looking at what's being done to him by Alvin Bragg in New York and now by Jack Smith in a courtroom in Miami, and they're coming to the conclusion, like I said, political persecution. So, like I said, the reactions are wide and varied. The politicians view it one way, they say something one way, but the base of the Republican Party says and views it as something else. It never ceases to amaze me how Republican politicians and Republican pundits just don't understand the very people that make up the party and the very people they're trying to get to vote for them. But anyway, I wanted to give you a reaction video, show you some of what I think, and I think it's true. The more they go after Trump, the stronger he's going to get, all the way to the nomination. But anyway, as we start to wrap this up, do me some favors. Number one, if you're not a subscriber to this channel, please do so. Number two, please leave a comment below. Number three, share the video around. Number four, give me a thumbs up on this thing. Tomorrow night, we're going to have a video out. It'll be out either Wednesday night or Thursday morning discussing the legal theories behind this indictment and why what everything they're based on is baloney. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.